Hello everybody, I hope you are well and admiring the new top. If you're in the know, if you're not, ignore that nonsense. I'll be home soon. Today's video is about inspiration. Somebody asked me recently, Diane, what are you going to do when you run out of ideas for these quilts? And I've got to say, that thought never ever crossed my mind. There's so many quilts that I would like to make. It's whether I've got enough time to make them. That's the worry, not how I will suddenly dry up of inspiration. And so today I thought I would share with you the things that inspire my quilt design and making. So I've left this quilt on the wall from last week and you can see it's a variation of the antique lace block design, and I came across that a couple of years ago. I think it was Pat Sloan where I first saw it, or something similar to it, and so that's one of the ways that I get inspired. I might see something out in the public domain and I might think, oh, I'd like to make that. I might put a few tweaks to it, but I'd like to make something along those lines. So other quilts that have been made in the past is definitely one of my inspirations for making quilts and designing them. And then the media also inspires me. So in January of 2023, my granddaughter, Erin, hi Erin, she said, why don't you watch Wednesday Addams? She's a teenager. And she said, you'll watch this, Nan, you'll enjoy that. And so I did, and I did enjoy it. It's quite a nice teen flick. Well, a series. I think the second one's coming out soon. But I watched it and with a quilter's eye, and I noticed that on Wednesday's Addams bed, there was a lovely quilt, all darks, dark greys, browns, blacks, just in squares. And I thought, ooh, I haven't made a quilt in those colours before. So I made that quilt, and I haven't got it, I have sold it, but I will show you what that looks like. That's the design. You can see it was just squares put within a grid, and that was enjoyable to make. And then I thought, well, if I've made a Wednesday quilt, I should make a quilt for every other day of the week. And so I was put in mind of the children's nursery rhyme. And so Wednesday's Child was full of woe. So that started me off. The next quilt I made in the series was a heart quilt. I've still got that one. And that was Friday's Child is Loving and Giving. So I will show you that. So it's a great big heart, all colourful, a bohemian type inspired loving and giving heart. And the strange thing about that one was I had a lot of YouTube hits for the making and designing of that quilt. And when I put it in my shop, I thought, oh, this isn't going to be around very long. Well, it's over a year and it still hasn't sold, so I'm not quite sure why really. It's well made, it's nice and bright. Perhaps it's too bright, I'm not so sure, but anyway. So that was the second quilt. And then Thursday's Child has far to go. Well, I found that quite difficult, trying to think of an image that would convey that idea of travel, of movement. And in the end, I was inspired with a painting that I've made. I'll show you that painting. And so that inspired the quilt for Thursday's Child. And it was just a white seagull flying across a blue sea. I haven't got the quilt and I don't keep images. I've got a black and white one. I'll share that one with you. So that was the quilt. It was made out of lots of scraps of blue. You can see some of the patterns in the different tones. And the curious thing about the sale of that quilt was the painting that I made that inspired that quilt was of a seabird that I saw flying over the sea while I was on holiday in one of the Channel Islands called Jersey. And the lady that bought it for her daughter, and they came from Jersey. So, small world. Wonder if she's felt the connection, whether that's impossible to impart a sense of place or emotion in a quilt. I mean, you can in art, in fine art, so why not in fabric? Anyway, she picked something up and she was very happy with that quilt. And then I made Tuesday's quilt. And the inspiration for Tuesday's Child with the Tree of Paradise in the centre motif was Margaret Atwood's book, Alias Grace. So I'd read that and I did try to incorporate some of the images of the blocks that she made. So there's the serpent twining around the outside of the quilt. But yeah, and that one sold. So someone appreciated that one. And the next one I made in the series was Saturday's Child Works Hard for a Living. And it was this bee inspired fabric. Let me take you closer up so that you can see all of the bees everywhere. There you go. All over. And I think that's a well-made quilt. It's got nice fabric in. I think the design works really well. This brown that goes around the outside, that comes along here and goes all the way around the quilt, that represents the waggle dance that bees do when they found a source of nectar. And I thought it was really lovely, but that has never sold. Perhaps people don't like bees. Maybe that's something I need to bear in mind if I am putting quilts together that are going to go in my shop. That maybe I should think of a wider audience. But like I say, that one's never sold, but I think it's lovely. Lovely and summery. And nothing works harder than a bee for a living, does it? And the child that is born on the Sabbath day is bonny, blithe and good and gay. And I made a rainbow quilt for that one. And again, I need to consider really what I'm putting out into the world. So when it said, and the child is born on the Sabbath day is bonny, blithe and good and gay, well, if it appeals to the gay community, I didn't have a problem with that. But that wasn't what my initial thought was. When I thought of gay, I thought of bright and gay and rainbows. So I don't know the personal life of the person that bought that quilt. That's none of my business whatsoever. But wherever it's gone, as long as it's in a good home and is being well used and appreciated, then I'm happy. But yes, there were a few comments about the gayness of that quilt. And the last one I made was Mundys Child is Fair of Face. And that's a pictorial quilt, all made with blocks. Lots of very bright colours. And that one found a home. So again, that was a really interesting way of working. And like I say, that one sold, that's found a home. So it's only the heart one and the bee one that's remaining. And I don't know why really. Perhaps I should take some better photographs. Maybe I'll do that before I open up the shop and present it better than it is. Not keen on taking pictures and doing all that faff, but that's what you have to do because that's what people see, isn't it? When they're buying something online, it's the image that sells. And sometimes the fabric itself might inspire a quilt. So I did make a quilt with a lighthouse on. I forgot about that one, and that was Shiver Me Timbers and some boats, and that's because I had some pirate fabric, and so I made that, and that went off to a playroom somewhere. I think that was in Scotland, north of England or Scotland, a while ago. And then what else? Oh, I made a mermaid quilt, and that one went off to Project Linus, and that was underwater and there was a boat, and that was because I had some lovely mermaid fabric, so that went in there. So sometimes the fabric itself can push me in a particular direction of designing a quilt. What else is there? Oh, events, not world events, although sometimes I do think I could make a protest quilt. I'm not going to get political or anything, but we need to look after our planet a little bit better, don't we? So I made this quilt. This is, well, it's actually a coverlet, and I called this one the Carolean quilt. And this was when King Charles came to the throne, and I was inspired to make this by the stained glass windows in Westminster Abbey and all the images that we saw. So that's that one. So events, that can make me make a quilt. So seasonal aspects, I've made the spring equinox. I really enjoyed making that quilt, and I've made some about the autumn. I do want to make an autumn equinox quilt. Autumn is my favourite season, and so, you know, those colours are drawn to me, and I like to do things like that. What else is there? Thinking hard now, and it's been a long day in front of this camera. Let me think. I have thought about making some more art quilts. Not necessarily art after my own expression of creativity, but perhaps of a well-known artist. I did once make a Wassily Kandinsky. You know, he makes the concentric circles, abstract art. I made that, but squares. And I have had a few ideas of quilts I'd like to make in tribute to particular artists, but I've only done that one so far. I would perhaps like to do some more of those. And the last quilt that I made that was inspired by a piece of art is this one. It's a painting I made after a holiday in Cornwall, and this is roughly what I've based my sustainable quilt on. And so you'll see something like that soon. My husband is laughing at me through the window at the moment and pulling faces. If I could get a picture of him, I would. No, he's run away. Oh, coward. Anyway, art. So I think now I've covered everything. Sometimes my artwork has inspired me to make a quilt, and I don't know if you're interested, that's why I've left it to the end. I thought I would share with you some of my paintings. Recently we redecorated, so I took everything off the wall and gave it a good clean. So our walls are covered with paintings that I've made of places that we've been together, and it's not fine art, it's more folk art or naive art, but it does capture more than a photograph can. It's of places that we've been to, things that we've seen and enjoyed, and so when I came back I used to paint. I don't do it so much now because quilting has just taken over, so I've left that. We've got two sort of connecting rooms. One is more light and blue, so the paintings in there are brighter, sort of, you know, Mediterranean, just like the start of this video. And then in the other room are more autumnal paintings because, like I say, it's my favourite season and I always sort of gravitate towards those colours and that time. So if you're still with me, thank you very much for your company and for putting up with all my jibber jabbering. And next week I shall be back in the UK. My husband, when he was making a fool of himself outside for the world to see, has just bought me this. I'm not quite sure which way it goes on, but there we go. Somewhere like that, to protect me from the sun because I'm very pale and I burn. So I'll be back. Thanks for your company and I'll see you soon. Bye.